All right, hello Internet. So, we are on to Natas 19. And when you get to Natas 19, your screen will look nothing like this because I messed up the challenge by playing around with the cookies, but you'll get the idea. Really ignore this piece. That was just me messing around with the cookie section. What you'll see when you come in here is basically stating that this page is mostly using the same code, but the session ID is a little longer and is no longer sequential. And if you see that we have a similar input, so we have username and password, and to be honest, like all the others, I had to cheat like a wild bandit on this one. And reason being is that there is no source code to look at, so that's kind of useless. But once you solve the problem, you realize, or at least once you've cheated and understood how the problem was solved, you'll realize why the code wasn't shown, because there's a very minor change that's done. And yeah. So first things first, user input. So I'm going to do A, and we're going to do A again. Log in, and then you're going to get presented with basically saying that you're logging in as a regular user, not the admin. And the goal is for us to log in as admin like we did last time in Natas 18. So if we actually inspect this page and we go to the network section like we did last time and refresh, we can see that when we refresh this, we scroll down a bit further, we can see our request header has a specific PHP session ID like last time, but this time it's longer and it doesn't really make much sense there. So to actually solve this, what I did is I cheated, but then I kind of like, I'm gonna explain it to you as if I didn't cheat. So one way to actually figure this out is looking at, okay, this is a shorter number, it's not massive, and let's kind of like iterate through this. And the way I had to iterate through it was through Firefox, because Brave didn't want to play fair with me. So we're gonna start with A, for instance, and we'll say login. And we've gotten back our response here, and we have our session ID here. And actually, let's go backwards. I'm going to do W because that's what I did for myself. So we'll do W here, we'll log in, and we receive this number, which I think is the same. Maybe it didn't change. Because that was the issue last time, Internet. When I did this, the cookie never changed. But if I put in 0 and resend it, it does change. And that's why we got our funky thing here. So, oh well. So this is the session ID we've gotten back for just the username as W. And what I did is I iterated through that. So if I go back here and then do W again, and then I have to change this once more to 0 because I'm not really sure. Refresh that and send it again with W. It gives me back a different, a seemingly slightly different number. And in here in my notes, I'm going to walk you through some stuff that helped me understand this. So what I did is I iterated through with W multiple times as the username, no password. And the password actually isn't even considered in here. So if I iterate through this, we have a series of numbers that seem similar. So we have 2D77, and that's staying the same, this section here. But everything else to the left of it is actually changing. So this section over, all these numbers seem to be changing slightly. So that is an interesting thing to think about and realize that, okay, if that's the case, then maybe there's some sort of encoding happening here. And I had no idea what encoding it was, so I had to Google around and figure out what other people said and how they've come across it. But if you actually look at these and you actually Google the different types of encodings, the specific thing we were doing, remember, was W. So this is our W here that we put in here. And to know what kind of encoding this is if you just look up CyberChef, you can play around with CyberChef and figure it out. But for me specifically, I read an answer and they actually used this ASCII table to kind of explain it. And I'm not sure if I can zoom in here. Let me make this a bit bigger so you can see it. There we go. So in this ASCII table, you can see there's different kind of representations of the ASCII. So there's decimal, hexadecimal, octal, and HTML, and etc. So the character we're looking at specifically for us is a lowercase w. So if we look here, we can see that our lowercase w has a few different types of representations. And the representation we care about is going to be the hexadecimal. And the reason being is that if you look at the response above, where you're going to see that we're getting a series of sevens for our w here. So we're getting sevens right there. So we're getting 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. So we can see that that's a hexadecimal encoding for specifically W. And you can say the same thing applies for 2D. So 2D is a hexadecimal encoding of the dash. So what we know is that this encoding for the PHP session ID, half of it is consistent and doesn't change, and the other half is randomized. And we can see that the other half is randomized is the 1 through 640 in relation to the last level that we did. So we know that there's going to be a random number between 1 and 640, and then we know the thing that's going to stay the same is the dash and the username that we put on this side. That's username, if you can read it. So this is going to be the consistent piece. This is going to be the random piece. Now, with that being said, what we wanted to do here is basically write a script that encodes the randomized number and also the dash and then the username that we want to put in. And remember, we know that it's admin from the previous level as well. So what we're going to do for our script is we're going to randomize that. And let me see if there's anything else I want to explain here that jumped out to me that was useful. I think that's mainly it. I do want to show you the individual's code that I hijacked for the script. So actually two things. So you can do a Python script for this, or you can do it potentially through Zap. I couldn't figure out how to do it through Zap. I played around with their different configurations, but I couldn't get it to work. This individual here, Chris Dale, as usual, uses Burp. And you can do it through Burp, but remember, Burp is super duper slow, so I decided to do a Python script. But there is a way to do it there. And then also, John Hammond does a Python script as well. I didn't copy his, I just copied somebody else's. But if I go to this section here, this is the one that I copied. So Johnny Schnatz, again, for the win, of course. His explanation was decent. I actually found this explanation slightly better from Ivan It Learning. And in here, actually, what this individual does is he actually explains what's happening or how they came about it. They actually had to cheat quite a bit as well. But the way that I actually liked the way that they wrote their Python is they wrote three different variations of the Python script. One is a synchronous solution. If you go down here, another one is a multi-threaded code. If you click that, it takes you to its GitHub. And the other one's asynchronous code. So, and then down right here, it actually shows you the time frames for each. So how long does it take for each one to complete? I actually didn't copy and paste his code and play around with it. Reason being is he actually funnels it through Burp. So you can see here, he's basically taking the encoded randomized digit and also the dash admin, and they're funneling that into Burp, and then they're having Burp run it. So I didn't take that, I just took Johnny Schnatz. But I thought that it was really interesting that they did the different types of time frames. So if we go to Johnny Schnatz and scroll down to the import section here, this is the code snippet. And I have that code snippet here, which I'll kind of walk you through at a high level. And let's change the coloring of our pencil, because we both know that bright colors on dark backgrounds are better than the alternative. So, as usual, in the code that we provided previously, and the other one, it was very similar to this because it was Johnny Snatch's code, because we're code stealers. But I'm going to explain what's happening here. So we're basically going to, this is all the header stuff, so we're basically going to log in. This is the string that we're checking for, so we have our for loop here. So we're going to basically iterate through 164 randomized digits, and then we're going to take those digits and we're going to tack them on to dash admin, which is here. So we have our I here, and we have our I here. And that I is going to iterate through 1 through 640. And we're going to tag that here. We're going to encode that. So we're encoding it here with a UTF-8 hexadecimal. And then once we've encoded that, we're going to encode all of it. We're going to put it into our cookie here. So once we've done that, we're actually going to run a request. Our request is going to go to the URL. It's going to authenticate us. So it's going to put our username and password from Natas 19 or 18. We're going to tag our cookie here, which is going to be the cookie information that we've tagged into this variable. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if in the text it represents the text that we don't want. So basically, if it's telling you that you're a regular user, we're going to say, okay, that's attempt 1, you're not admin, keep going. But if it says anything else outside of that, then we know that we're admin. So if we're admin, then it's going to print the context, and then it's going to break, and then it's going to tell us what the number is. So that's it in a nutshell there. One thing I'll revisit here is this piece here, because this is probably the most important kind of new thing that's happening. So let's come down here and I'll explain it briefly. So remember, we have 1 through 640, right? And then this is going to be a randomized thing. So we're going to randomize, we're not going to randomize, but we're going to run through this through a for loop. So it's going to be a for loop. And then we're actually going to tack this onto dash admin. That's the one we're trying to get into. And remember, the reason we're doing this is that the only thing that we can change is the session cookie. And we know that one of the sessions that already exists, because a session is basically an existing connection between one party and another. And if that session is already existing and that session is an admin session, then we're going to get access to the password to the next level. So all we need to do is iterate through all these different sessions to find out which session is already connected as admin and grab the password. And we know that the username for that specific session is admin. So this is why we're actually going to keep dash admin as is, and then we're going to randomize through this. And then all of this, remember, is going to be hex encoded. So once that's hex encoded, then we're going to pipe that into our cookie. And then once we've piped that into our cookie, then we're going to keep refreshing and hitting the server, which is what we're going to do with this for loop and this Python script. And I've run it already. I'm not going to run it again because it took about, I'd say, a little less than a minute, maybe a minute. And here you can see we've run through all these attempts. It's telling me that it's not admin. And if we get all the way down to 281, it tells us that we're admin, and then it prints out the page contents here, which is pretty ugly. So what I wanted to do here is actually take out the specific 281 and dash admin, hex encode it, and then pop it into the browser to see what it looks like. So if we know it's 281, we can go to, I have CyberChef open here. So to play around with CyberChef, they have a series of things here. I'm not going to really talk through that much, but what I did is I just typed in hex. I wanted to find hex encoding, so we want to go to hex. And then what we want to encode is 281-admin, because we know 281 is the correct number, and we know -admin is the consistent factor that's going to stay the same. So here's our hex encoded number. And then what I did is I dropped it into our notes here. And then you can see that when in the notes, it's all kind of together. But when you get it from CyberChef, they separate it out, because usually in hex encoding, it's always in two bytes. So we have like a number is 2 bytes, and they're all kind of 2 bytes is that. So all you have to do is kind of take the spacing out of each of these, and then you'll get to what we have here. So once we have this, I'm going to drop this into our existing extension or session for the browser. So I'm going to change the cookie here. I'm going to say enter, refresh, send that again. And you can see once we've sent it again, we're logged in as admin, and we have the password here, and we're on to Natas 20. All right, so that was a confusing one for me. I'm sure it was confusing for you because my explanation probably wasn't the greatest. But either way, learned some stuff. Wasn't really the best challenge. I didn't like this one that much. But yeah, let's go to Natas 20.